I wasn't still of age to vote, but my father thought he would give me another important experience. He was a great admirer of Adlai Stevenson, governor of Illinois, and he was running for president. And so he took me to the Adlai Stevenson for President headquarters, and he volunteered me. I wasn't a volunteer. I was his offering to the campaign. And it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. There are many theatrical aspects to an election campaign. There's tension and mounting excitement and build. And then there's the debate, and it's very theatrical. And then either at the end there's great elation or absolute black tragedy. The world is coming to an end. And I became hooked on the political process. But it was my father who inculcated the importance of active political participation in me. In 2004, the Japanese American National Museum, which we founded, and I was serving as the chairman of the board at that time, we, in partnership with the University of Arkansas at Little Rock, sent 5 exhibits, and the university created 3 exhibits about the Arkansas camps. And on that visit in 2004, I came back to Rohwer for the first time since I left. I came back with memories. I remember that beyond the barbed wire fence, there were pools of water and trees growing out of it. And around our block, there was a ditch where I used to catch pollywogs and watch them sprout legs and magically turn into frogs. I had those warm, wonderful childhood memories. I came back to Rohwer in 2004, and I recognized nothing. Of course, the barbed wire fence and the barracks were all gone, but the trees were gone, and the pools of water and the ditch was gone. It was just miles and miles of cotton fields. The only remains of there once having been a World War II internment camp was the cemetery, and that was outside the barbed wire fence. And as a child, my parents never took us to the cemetery. But that turned out to be, for me, the most wrenching and most moving experience there. There were many, many markers of people that were born in 1862 or 1878, and also markers of babies who were buried without first names. Baby Yamada, baby Tanaka. But the most prominent marker there in that cemetery was a crumbling concrete marker. And on that marker were listed the names of the young men who went from behind that barbed wire imprisonment, leaving their families and loved ones in that camp behind barbed wire fences, and put on the same uniform as that of the sentries guarding over us. And they were put into a segregated all Japanese American unit, the 442nd Regimental Combat Team. And they were sent to Europe to fight for this country. An irony there. And they fought with amazing, unbelievable courage and with patriotism. These were the same young men, when Pearl Harbor was bombed, who rushed to their recruitment centers, like all young Americans, to volunteer to serve in the U.S. military. That act of patriotism in 1942 was answered with a slap in the face. They were denied service and labeled enemy non-aliens. It was outrageous enough to be called an enemy when you're volunteering to fight for this country. But it was compounded by the word non-alien. What is that? That's a citizen defined in the negative. They even took that away from us. But a year after imprisonment, they still had the faith in the ideals of this country, despite all of the outrage that had been inflicted on them. They wanted to prove their loyalty, and they wanted to prove the words in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag that they recited every morning at school. And they fought with amazing courage and valor on those bloody battlefields. Many perished there. They sustained the highest combat casualty rate of any unit of its size. And when the war ended, they came back to the United States as the single most decorated unit of all of the units in the Second World War. 21 Medals of Honor. The highest military recognition the nation can grant, 21, is now worn by the veterans of the Second World War, veterans of the 442nd. They were welcomed back on the White House lawn by President Truman, who said to them, "You fought not only the enemy, but prejudice, and you won." I stood in front of that monument in the cemetery, and the tears were hard to control. And I understood for the first time how precious my citizenship is and what a high price that has been paid for it. I value my citizenship so profoundly. To be an American citizen is something very important that too many people take too lightly, and too many people don't vote. Our voter registration rate is low, and our voter rate on election day is shameful. We must know what it means to be an American and how precious our rights as a citizen are. And this is a story told by the World War II Japanese-American Internment Museum. It is a museum that tells certainly my own personal story that moves me very much. And every one of those photos remind me of what my parents went through, an anguish, a tortured anguish that they went through, the loss and the pain that they suffered. But it also reminds me of the determination and patriotism of all those who served. It tells this story. It tells the story of American democracy and how precious our democracy is. And this story has got to resonate not only here in the Shea County and not only in Arkansas, but throughout the country. It is an American story we tell here with this museum. And it is a profoundly important, gravely important museum. I thank you all so much, all those who contributed, all those who support this museum, and all those who will continue to sustain this museum for what you have done and will do. And as we say on Star Trek, may the World War II Japanese-American Internment Museum here in McGehee, Arkansas, live long and prosper.